Hey guys, my name is Max and welcome to Simple Biology. Today we're going to be talking about ribosomes, which are actually very important in biology. Ribosomes are one of the few parts of a cell that can be found in both eukaryotes and prokaryotes. In other words, you can find a ribosome in everything from a human cell to the cell of a microscopic bacteria, which is very significant. The first thing we're going to look at is the function of a ribosome, and related to that, the structure of it. Now, the first thing is that it's made up of a type of RNA called ribosomal RNA, as well as various proteins. Next, as you can see in this little picture, there's actually two parts to a ribosome: the small subunit and the large subunit, and that's actually what they're called. And so that's kind of it for structure, but its function is to manufacture proteins, to create proteins out of their base subunits called amino acids. The process it uses is called translation, and we'll be talking about this process. We'll talk about translation again and in more detail in our genetics unit. There's going to be a video called Transcription and Translation, and so check that out if you want to know more detail. But just kind of a brief overview, this molecule is called messenger RNA, and it stores genetic information which the ribosome can then take, and that's what it uses to create the proteins. And there's a whole process, and we'll be talking about that later. There are actually two types of ribosomes: free ribosomes and bound ribosomes. We're going to look at free ribosomes first. And in this simplified diagram of a cell, you can kind of see you've got the cell membrane, you've got the nuclear membrane, and in between that is a region called the cytosol. Now, free ribosomes are just kind of scattered throughout the cytosol. There's not really much organization there. And that's actually important for their role because they manufacture proteins that will then be used inside the cytosol. That will just be kind of scattered throughout the cytosol. And the proteins, it doesn't matter where they are. They just have to be in the cell. The other type of ribosomes are called bound ribosomes. And as the name suggests, they're bound to various membranes inside the cell. This organelle right here is called the endoplasmic reticulum. And bound ribosomes are generally found on that, and some can even be found on the nuclear membrane. We'll be talking about both of those organelles in one of our next videos. Now, the difference between a bound ribosome and a free ribosome is that bound ribosomes manufacture cells that will not function inside the cytosol. There are three types that we're going to talk about. The first are proteins that function outside of the cell. That will the bound ribosomes will produce those, and then those will just be sort of exported outside the cell. The second type is membrane proteins, which, well, as their name suggests, function on a membrane. And so the ribosomes will just kind of manufacture them, and the membrane protein will insert itself onto the membrane right next to the ribosome. And so that makes sense why the ribosome has to be on a membrane. And then the third type is actually proteins that will be inside a vesicle or another organelle, and we'll be talking about those with their respective vesicles and organelles. Vesicle is a type of organelle that we'll be talking about later. Now, just kind of a last note, keep in mind that bound and free ribosomes are actually structurally identical, and they switch roles fairly frequently. If you look at a specific ribosome, it might begin as a free ribosome and then become a bound ribosome and then become a free ribosome again. They're not entirely concrete. They're not stuck where they are. And so that's just another interesting thing to keep in mind. And yeah, ribosomes are as simple as that.